Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Welcome. Welcome to the call. Listen, there will probably be a number of dings going on as we begin the call with people coming in late. So if you would, just include that and do whatever you need to do to have it not interrupt your participation in the call. It's a privilege and an honor to be with you guys tonight. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy that you're here. If you bring yourself totally to this call, I promise you a tremendous amount of value. Tonight, we're going to discuss what I call the bliss point. But before I can talk to you about the bliss point, we first have to get clear on a few things about the brain and a few things about the heart. So let's start off with the brain. There's a great deal that one could discuss about the brain. I could spend a whole call, in fact, just talking about the brain. But tonight, we only want to talk about some very specific things to do with the brain and some very specific things to do with the heart. This is useful information, but none that you have to commit to memory. Oh, you know what, you guys, I'm going to mute everybody. I forgot to do that. There you go. Now there will be no background noise. What I'm about to cover is useful information, but it's nothing that you have to commit to memory. It'll give you the background data for having the bliss point understandable and usable. I'll let you know things that you might want to commit to memory or things that you might want to learn, if you will. Otherwise, just be present in the conversation. Everybody's muted at this moment, and at certain points during the call, I'll open up and give you the opportunity to share if you'd like to do that. And how you share on these calls is you simply say your first name, and then I'll call on you. What you don't want to do is shout out my name, okay? You just say your name, and then I'll call on you as we get the sharing going. The connection between the brain and the heart. So the limbic part of the brain connected to the heart is what I call the emotional body. And in the emotional body exists what I call the initial bruise. And every human being alive on the planet has an initial bruise. The initial bruise is the result of the first time you ever experienced rejection, ever experienced betrayal or an injustice. Perhaps it was simply an uncertainty of yourself. Anything related to this sort results in a bruising in the emotional body. After the initial bruise, as we live our lives, that bruise gets hit. And our tendency is to start to avoid situations, circumstances, actions, or people in areas of our life where the bruise seems to get touched or hit. It's our way of protecting ourselves, but it also is our way of limiting ourselves. Commonly, when we fall in love and we get into a relationship with a person, that individual has more access to hitting the bruise than anybody else. Now, the choice becomes running away, reacting bitterly, or using it as an opportunity to transform. That is an opportunity to heal the emotional body. It's my belief that the couple is your sanctuary. It's your place of refuge. It's the place to transform and to heal the initial bruise. But that isn't the way we naturally handle things. It takes a particular kind of work. It takes a particular kind of stand. You see, I believe in true love. I believe in love being experienced, expressed, and expanded wherever I am. I believe that the couple is your sanctuary. I also believe that your tribe, your family, your community is your sanctuary, a place of refuge where you get reminded of who you really are. And who you really are is pure love and life energy. Now, this call isn't about all of that, however. I want you to have some understanding of the emotional body because, you see, every time the bruise gets hit, consider there's a webbing effect. That is, from the initial bruise, there are now pain spots all connected throughout the emotional body. For those of you who know Eckhart Tolle's work, he calls it the pain body for this very reason. The many areas within the emotional body where there's pain, and as you and I start to heal ourselves, we generally will go for those that are most recent, most current, perhaps the loudest. Now, I want to touch on that again because I'm not sure that I delivered it clearly. You see, there's this initial bruise. Imagine in your mind's eye just a bruise, any kind of bruise. But then imagine little lines webbing from that bruise, and throughout there's new pain spots. It's the newest ones that usually get our attention, the ones that are most recent. I think a lot of you have heard the distinction. You're never upset for the reason you think. If you've never heard that distinction, I think you should commit this one to memory or write it down. You see, you're never upset for the reason you think. So what does that mean? What it means is this. You see, every current pain can be traced back to the initial bruise. So your upset today has everything to do with that first time you were rejected, that first time you were betrayed, that first time that you became uncertain of yourself, the first time that you were surrounded by anything unjust. If you heal that initial bruise, everything else naturally diminishes. So this thing, the emotional body, is so very important to relationships. It's so very important to everything you do in life because it literally dominates every action, every behavior, every decision that you'll ever make. It determines the partner that you choose, and it determines the partner that you reject. It chooses how unhappy you allow yourself to be, and it chooses the standards that you'll set yourself up for to live life against, and the standards that you have for yourself regarding love, romance, etc. So now consider the heart-brain connection. Again, just to remind you, that connection is what I call the emotional body. So everything we just talked about lives or exists inside of that connection. So imagine, if you will, in your mind's eye, imagine a line going from your heart straight up to the base of your brain. Just kind of imagine it. Now, the initial bruise is an obstruction. The obstruction is the initial bruise so that life energy and pure love gets blocked. It doesn't flow freely. Heart Math Incorporated calls that freedom coherence. When you have no obstruction and the heart and brain are completely coherent, completely connected, communicating with each other. But in order to have coherence, one has to understand the bliss point. So now we're going to focus just on the brain for a moment. So the brain. There's a lot of things we could talk about regarding the brain, but we're only going to focus on one thing about the brain in this conversation, and it's called the reticular activating system. Some of you may have heard of the reticular activating system, and some of you may actually know what it is, but mostly people don't know, and people don't have any knowledge of it. It is the control center that manages everything. It's probably the most amazing part of the brain and definitely your access to alter anything in your life. So what is this thing, the reticular activating system? Well, it's in charge of so much I had to look at a way to design the call so that I can make a point without having to go through everything there is about the reticular activating system. So here's what I want you to know about this unique, wonderful system. It manages your reality. You know you have a reality, right? You know that you have a reality that's distinct from my reality, and a reality that's distinct from your partner's reality, your friend's reality, the people around you, their reality. And as well, there is a reality that we all share. But that reality we're not going to talk about just in this conversation. Well, we're going to stick to that you have a reality and I have one. And we discuss our reality like it is the reality, like it is the truth. We relate to it that way. You almost have to. It's how you have to exist, how you have to make it in life. It's not like you're bad because you think your reality is the right one. No, that's just the way we're designed. But it's a really good thing to know, because when you do it, you have the opportunity to stop doing it and to get in somebody else's world. Whomever you're reacting with, they also have their reality like it's the truth. And in both cases, get this, every reality is accurate. But in there lies the communication problem. Think about this. At any given second, there's about 2 million bits of data. Now, this is every second, you understand? Any given second, there's about 2 million bits of data that you're surrounded by. There's lights, there's sound, images, things going on, thoughts that you have, a future you have, a past you have. Just creating a picture in your brain of what the eye picks up takes a tremendous amount of data space. So there's 2 million bits of data in any given second, but the brain, now this is something you might want to know, the brain can only process 162,000 bits of data per second. So if you're surrounded by 2 million and you can only process 162,000, what happens to the rest of that data? This is where the reticular activating system comes into play. It determines what you can see and what you cannot. It determines what you can hear and what you cannot. I hope this is getting in. I hope that you get that this thing is a filter, that this filter determines what gets in. Of all of the available data, only a pinch can get in, and it's got to decide for you what that pinch will be. Not too long ago, I found out that I was getting a new car. It's a silver Ford Fusion. So I got the little booklet, and I saw the picture of it. And before I heard about the car or saw the picture, I never really noticed or even cared about a Ford Fusion. But the moment we learned we were getting that car, the moment we picked that sucker up, between the two of us, we saw so many Ford Fusions, and they were silver. Now, did everybody go out and buy a silver Ford Fusion because they knew I got one? No, that would be absurd. But what happened is central control of my brain, the reticular activating system, realized that a silver Ford Fusion was now important to me, this organism. And that's how it determines what you see and what you don't. It determines based on what it thinks is important to you. Now, what difference does that make? It makes an incredible amount of difference given what you're up to in your life. You see, you have a particular self-image, and that self-image is something that you focus on often. And because you focus on that often, you have to create a projected image, which we call your social mask. And now that's focused on often. You ever heard the distinction, what you focus on expands? What do you think that this is? Like a mystical conversation? No. like somehow in some areas things expand just because you decide to focus on it. It's not mystical at all. It's all biology. The reticular activating system takes what you focus on and interprets that as important to you. And if it's important to you, the organism, then it must allow you to see anything related to that. Now, one little note here is that the brain cannot think in not. So for those of you who think that quitting smoking might be a really good idea, the brain can't talk quit. So if you talk to the brain about quitting smoking, the only thing it can comprehend is the is, and the is smoking. So you have to create a new is that you can focus on where smoking is no longer a part of that. If you're dealing with something like that, we can do that one-on-one. This conversation isn't necessarily about that, but I just want you to get that everything you want is directly connected to the reticular activating system. And there are ways that we can create new opportunities, new behaviors, and new ways of being that are right now outside of your scope. So if you have some conversation about not being lovable, let's say deep down how it is for you is you're not lovable. Well, there's 2 million bits of information surrounding you at any given second. I think that the brain will have no problem finding at least 50,000 bits of information in that second to support you in your view. So you'll have plenty of support to determine I'm not lovable. But what about the other million or so bits of information that's left that it could draw from? Could there not be another 50,000 or so bits a second that would support a whole different view of how lovable you actually are, how much you actually count, how important your presence is here? And you can carry that conversation through to anything that matters to you, whether it be love, romance, intimacy, even your finances, or just having peace of mind. So you can see the reticular activating system is a very good part of your brain to get friendly with. By the way, in my workshops and in my one-on-one coaching sessions, we use the power of the reticular activating system to alter reality. You see, it's in charge of your reality. It's designed to keep the reality you already have in existence. See, it doesn't really care, good, bad, right, wrong. The reticular activating system has no morality chart. It simply goes after what's important to you. It's designed to keep your current reality in existence. Why? For survival. It's for the survival of the organism, to keep things in existence, to keep it the way it is. However, you see, you and I don't live in prehistoric times. We live in the 21st century. We're pretty safe as far as our survival is concerned. It's pretty well taken care of. We now can really look at ways to use the reticular activating system to create beyond our current reality, to create an environment that appeals to us, to create the love life of our dreams, to create what we really want, the financial view that we really care about. So for those of you who are on the call, that are in my workshops, or those of you who are on the call that I'm already coaching, and for those of you who have just been on the calls, or maybe you're listening to this recording, I have a system for rewiring the brain that I call the 4 steps. We're not going to do the 4 steps on this call, but I want you to know that it exists, and that if you choose to work with me, I will work with you through those 4 steps, and we can rewire just about any habit or behavior that's using you. Now, what does all of this have to do with the bliss point? If you can imagine in your mind's eye a grid, like a scale, okay? And the top of the scale is anxiety. And I want you to see, like, the heading would be anxiety, but inside of anxiety, I want you to include overwhelm, stress, upset, and any extreme experience. That all goes on the top of the scale. I call it anxiety, but it includes all those things, okay? Now, the bottom of the scale, I call that boredom. But in this place, I want you to have under the heading boredom, I want you to see a lack of inspiration, a lack of passion. I want you to see distress. I want you to see mild bouts of depression. So it's not just boredom as you know it. It includes all those other things. So every person on this call and every person on the planet has at some point or another in their life, and probably throughout any given day, has gone all the way to the top of the scale. And when you're at the top of the scale, you try to do everything you can to get out of it, right? You don't want to stay in this anxiety, this overwhelm, this stressed and upset, extreme experience area. If you find yourself being anxious or stressed, you're looking for ways out of that. That's a natural tendency. But most of us, when we try to get out, we overcompensate, and before you know it, we plummet all the way to the bottom of the scale. And we either end up with no motivation or a lack of interest, lack of inspiration, lack of passion, or just plain boredom. And when we get there, we want to get out of that, and then we plummet back up. Now, not everybody has those extremes, but everybody on the call, you can relate to those extremes. The bliss point is when life offers you enough to be challenged, enough to have you grow step by step. You're not at the bottom of the scale. You're not in that world that I call boredom. And remember, boredom includes all those other experiences. Don't get stuck with what you think boredom is. It includes all of that stuff. You're just not getting enjoyment out of life. And yet, you're not so challenged that you're at the top of the scale where you're stressed out, overwhelmed, upset, losing sleep. No, the bliss point exists somewhere, fluctuating in the middle of the scale. Can everybody see that? Of course you can. So what do you measure for to be in the bliss point? Well, you measure for being present. You measure for being aware. You measure for being connected. And you measure for synergy. So there's 4 things to measure for: being present, being aware, being connected, and synergy. When all 4 of those are present and somehow in alignment, that, my friends, is the bliss point. We've all been in the bliss point, but it's generally by accident. Tonight, we're going to get to the bliss point on demand. But before we do that, a few words about the heart. Let's focus just a little bit on the heart. Everybody knows the heart is a blood pump. But what many people don't know is that the heart is about 78% neurons. And what do you know about neurons? I'll tell you what you know about that. Anything with neurons equals intelligence. Do you know that far more information gets transmitted from the heart to the brain versus the other way around? That's right. Your heart space has intelligence. For those of you who have an emotional bruise that's extreme, you might notice that you will avoid the heart space. What I mean by that is that you might think of emotional experience and feelings as secondary or something that should be ignored completely. You might have even chosen a kind of training that would lead you that way as well. So that has you mostly living, like most of your behaviors and most of your actions are given by the brain space, some logical angle. Now, for some people, it's the exact opposite. You understand? You had an extreme emotional experience as the initial bruise, and then you get stuck in your emotions. Like that's where your head is always there. You're always trying to work it out. You're always dealing with your feelings about everything. Your emotional experience runs the show. And therefore, logic gets very little attention. See, the perfect dance, you guys, the perfect place to be is to be well grounded in both the heart space and the brain space. You have to have much power in the logical area, and you need to have much power in the experiential, emotional area. So in the work that I do, and in the coaching that I offer, and in the workshops that I lead, one of the things that we really take on is bringing language to our emotional experience. Because you see, our emotional experience, that is your heart space, has no language. It has pictures and it has feelings. It has emotions, but it has no language. So we use the brain to apply language, because once we apply language, we have access to it. Again, we're not working on that tonight, but I want you to have that little bit of background about the heart and the brain connection. The two connected being the emotional body, and I want you to get the initial bruise because they all play together, you see. So the exercise that I'm now going to train you guys in tonight is the opportunity and the possibility to get yourself to the bliss point on demand. And when you're in the bliss point, you make better decisions. When you're in the bliss point, you connect better with others. When you're in the bliss point, you're less likely to take on other people's emotional stuff, and you're able to observe and not get entangled. The exercise that I'm about to train you in is best done throughout the day, maybe before you make big decisions or before you go to be in a group of people where there might be a lot of emotional stuff. It's okay to use it to save yourself, so to speak, but it's much more powerful to use it to prepare yourself. I do the bliss point exercise before every call, before every coaching call, before this call, before I'm doing anything that involves work that I am bringing other people into my space and getting into theirs. So we're now going to set up for the exercise. From this point on, you probably want to commit this stuff to memory. You might want to take some notes. You definitely want to learn it, and you want to keep it with you. Distinguish one thing, and this thing I call full moments. And those of you on the call who've been working with me for a while, you know what I mean by full moments. And I'm going to count on you to share a little bit when it comes time so that other people can get in touch with their own. What is a full moment? Well, a full moment is a moment in time. It's not a general space of time, you understand. It's a moment in time where you had the experience of being full of gratitude, full of appreciation. You felt synergy and you felt connected. A lot of people have these moments when their children are born. Some people have it when they get their diploma and they graduate from college or even high school. Some major accomplishment, people have sometimes a full moment. So a full moment is a real moment in time when you had the experience of being full. So a couple of mine. When I was a little boy, the nun teacher accused me of lying. I was a little guy. I might have been in the second grade. I can't remember exactly. No, it must have been in the third grade. And you know, I went to a Catholic school, and they would check your milk carton on your way out of the lunchroom, and I didn't drink my milk. And the nun stopped me and said, drink your milk. And I said, no, there's something wrong with it. I'm not going to drink it. And I loved milk, so there was nothing going on about that. And she said, either drink your milk or go to the principal's office. So I went to the principal's office. They called my father, and he came. I was scared. And the nun, who was the principal, said to him, your son lied to me. And my dad looked at me, and he said, son, are you telling the truth? And I said, yes. And he looked at the principal, and he said, listen, I have 3 other boys at home, and if you were to tell me that any one of them had lied to you, I might believe you. But this one, he doesn't lie. I had the experience of being full of appreciation, full of gratitude for being validated and protected and supported. Another such time when I was full of gratitude and appreciation was a moment when I realized that I had found the love of my life. It was just like I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the real deal. And I realized there was nothing else to hope for, nothing else to wait for, and nothing else to wish for. I was, and I am, full of gratitude and appreciation. So those are a couple of mine. I have many more, of course. Some are more intimate than others. But everybody on this call has a full moment. So I'm about to open the call, and I'd like for you to share one of yours. Share with us a full moment. And how you share is just saying your name and giving me time to call on you. Now, it'll take a second to open the call. Give me a second here. Okay, we're unmuted. So a couple of you, if you will, share a full moment, will you?
This is David.
David, thank you.
So, boy, great conversation, Thomas. Where I immediately go to in a full moment was not long before my father died. And we're sitting in the kitchen here, and we're standing across the counter from each other. Now, my father had gotten himself pretty involved in the church up in Utah, and it wasn't the Mormon church, it was a non-denominational. And I said to him, I says, you ever tell your church members that you got a gay son? And he says to me, he goes, absolutely. And I also tell them there's nothing that you can ever say that would have me hurt my son or you. And he looks at Brad. Absolutely
wow.
absolutely made me cry on the spot.
Yeah, great. That's a good one, David. Really good. Thank you. Another one?
This is Rasha.
Yes, Rasha. Thank you.
So when I went on this last trip to Sudan, there was an evening where I was talking to my mom, and then my cousins came in, and then my other aunties came in, and before we knew it, there was like 10 of us scrunched in this little space. Some of us on the bed, some of us on the floor. She was sitting on a chair, and we were all talking and laughing. And I just, for a moment, I stopped and looked all around me, and I just felt so deeply connected to my family and so full of gratitude.
Nice. Very, very nice. Thank you, Rasha. Okay, unless somebody else has one quickly, I'm going to mute. Okay, you're now muted, so we're now going to begin the exercise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the exercise first, then we'll do it together. So there's 5 steps I'm going to give you. Don't do any of them yet. Number 1, except number 1 you could probably do. Bring to mind a full moment. Bring to mind a full moment. If you're having trouble grabbing a full moment, then bring to mind something that you really love and appreciate. It could be your pet. It could be just something that makes you feel full right now. Number 2, focus on the experience of the moment versus the moment itself. So instead of focusing on what happened, you're only bringing that to mind to get the experience. Once you have the experience, you're going to focus on the experience. The experience is what? Being full. Number 3, as you focus on the experience, I want you to feel it. Close your eyes and place your hand over your heart. Number 4, I want you to breathe normally but deeply into your heart. Not fast, but deeply and normally into your heart space. And as you exhale, I want you to breathe out gratitude. We're going to do 3 breaths together. It'll take about 90 seconds. When you do this on your own, you're welcome to do as many breaths as you want. But in this case, we're going to do 3. So bring to mind a full moment. Focus on the experience of the moment. Close your eyes and place your hand on your heart. Breathe deeply but normally into your heart space. And do that now 3 times. Very good. Open your eyes. I've opened up the call. How do you feel? What's your experience? What are you present to?
This is David.
Yeah, David.
I went to another moment with my father, and it was just absolute love.
And what are you present to now?
Calmness.
Good. That's the bliss point, David. And can you see that if in this moment there were any choices to make, any decisions to make, any interaction that really would take awareness and wherewithal, can you see that having this exercise first would give you more presence and more connection?
Absolutely. It was a complete shift.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's magic. It's
Thank you.
Extraordinary. Somebody else, please. What are you present to?
Okay.
Yes, please.
I went to my bliss point, and I just felt peace and trust and love.
Nice, Tammy. Thank you. Thanks for being on the call, too. One more person, please.
Deborah here?
Yes, Deborah. Thank you.
Sure. There was a time fairly recently where I had missed seeing my 2-year-old granddaughter, and when I brought her into the house, she said, "I miss you." And it was just so sweet.
Mm-hmm. And so what are you present to now, having done the exercise?
Love and being full.
Good.
Love and fullness.
Very nice. Thank you, Deborah. I have time for one more. What are you present to?
Tina.
Experience. Yes, please.
So I can get that miraculous joy, and immediately what's there is the other stuff. Like the uncomfortableness of being intimate or exposed or vulnerable.
Yeah, very good. It's really great, Tina, because, that's the thing that starts to surface, right? And as it starts to surface, it gives us the thing that the initial bruise forces to the forefront that gets in the way of having what you really want. So we're clear. We're clear of what to really take on. So thank you for that. I mean, I think it was and by the way, for everybody, you did this now one time. I do it 10, 20, 30 times a day, and I just want you to know that the impact is, I can't even tell you, the impact is amazing, and it's worth your time. And it's easy to do. If you're out in public, then you may not close your eyes and you may not want to put your hand on your heart, right? But, if you're able, like I find that I don't even have to bring to mind a full moment anymore. If I close my eyes and put my hand on my heart, boom, I'm there. I just start breathing into my heart space, and I start breathing gratitude and appreciation, and I get to the bliss point very quickly. So why I say that is the opportunity and possibility for everybody. Now, you are muted again, so if anybody's saying anything, I can't not hear you. Thank you for doing the exercise. Thank you for being on the calls. Our next call, which will be the last one for 2014, is December 21st, 6 p.m. It's a Sunday. Mark your calendars, please. Invite anybody you'd like to have on the call. Next year, 2015, we're going to switch our call to the third Thursday of every month instead of Sunday. And we're going to move the call to 6:30 instead of 6 o'clock. So, of course, I'll post it. I'll announce it on the next call. But as you know, not everybody makes it to every call. So there are people that that might sometimes do the call. So if you want to remind them and let them know, I'd appreciate that, and they may appreciate it also. So lastly, I just want to say thank you. Happy Thanksgiving. I appreciate every single one of you. I acknowledge you. I respect you, and I honor you, and I love you. Have an extraordinary night. And I'll talk to you next month. Bye-bye.